Something historic just happened. And if you're even remotely following American politics or global finance, this is the kind of news that stops you in your tracks. Just minutes ago, Donald Trump lost control of Mar-a-Lago. Yes, the crown jewel of his post-presidency life, the symbol of his lingering grip on the Republican Party, has been seized by the government. In an emergency move that legal analysts are calling the most dramatic property takeover in modern political history, a federal judge signed the order and the fallout has already begun. But what really sent shockwaves through Washington and Wall Street wasn't just the seizure itself. It was Warren Buffett's unexpected reaction. The legendary Oracle of Omaha, a man who almost never comments on individual political figures, finally broke his silence, and what he said about Trump's business empire has the financial world stunned. This isn't just a single legal blow or one more headline. This is the start of something bigger, the unraveling of Trump's entire financial and political stronghold. To understand why this changes everything, we need to go back to where this all began. Since leaving office, Mar-a-Lago hasn't just been Trump's home. It's been his personal headquarters, the place where power players come to strategize, where politicians line up to secure his endorsement, where money flows and influence is traded like currency. It was here that Republican leaders came, sometimes humiliated, sometimes eager, but always willing to play the game, to kiss the ring, as some put it. From McCarthy seeking approval to donors, writing seven-figure checks, Mar-a-Lago became the beating heart of Trump's post-presidential empire. But behind the glamour, something darker was brewing. For 6 months, investigators had been digging into how Trump valued this prized property. And what they found, according to newly unsealed court documents, is not just inconsistent accounting, it's outright fraud. Trump allegedly told banks Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 billion when he needed loans. But when tax season rolled around, he claimed it was worth only $27 million. That's not just a gap. Prosecutors say it's a deliberate deception, and that's criminal. Originally kicked off by the New York Attorney General's office, the probe expanded quickly when federal authorities spotted links to wider financial misconduct, including potential violations of interstate banking laws. Then, just today, things escalated fast. At 2:47 p.m. Eastern Time, Judge Sandra Chen, a well-respected Bush appointee, issued the emergency seizure order. And it's not just symbolic. Trump no longer has operational control over Mar-a-Lago. He can't throw events, can't use the space for politics, and shockingly, he can't even walk into some parts of the estate without court permission. Federal marshals were immediately deployed. They've already locked down the main ballroom where Trump was set to host a major fundraiser just hours from now. The visual alone of one of America's most iconic homes under federal lockdown is something the country has never seen. But behind that imagery is a deeper crisis. Trump's liquidity, already under intense strain, is now reaching critical levels. Forbes recently reported that most of his wealth is tied up in real estate that's either heavily mortgaged or under legal fire. Mar-a-Lago wasn't just his pride. It was one of the few properties that still brought in real cash. Without it, his entire business structure starts to wobble. That's not speculation, it's the calculation prosecutors are openly making. The judge's order describes a long-term pattern of deception that caused significant harm to banks and violated core federal banking laws. Her language wasn't subtle. She accused Trump of intentionally ignoring legal boundaries in the pursuit of personal gain. And she didn't stop there. She took the rare step of scheduling a press conference for tomorrow that almost never happens. Legal analysts believe she's trying to get ahead of any narrative Trump might spin, cutting off claims of political persecution before they even start. Then came the Buffett moment, and that changed everything. Just 90 minutes after the order was filed, Warren Buffett issued a public statement. The 94-year-old investor, who's known for his cautious and apolitical demeanor, didn't mince words. When you build a business on deception, he said, eventually the bill comes due. He made it clear that this wasn't about politics, it was about math. According to Buffett, the numbers behind Trump's empire simply don't hold up. He revealed he'd been warning investors for months to steer clear of Trump's properties. That in itself is a serious warning. But what stunned the business world most was Buffett's assertion that Trump's entire model, his philosophy of business, was more con game than commerce. It's one thing to hear political pundits say it, but when Warren Buffett says it, the financial world listens. It turns out Buffett's been watching Trump closely for years. A board member at Berkshire Hathaway, speaking anonymously, told CNBC that Buffett sees Trump as a major threat to the credibility of American capitalism. That's a heavy accusation from one of the most respected names in finance, but the pattern fits and history backs it up. Trump has always demanded unwavering loyalty, only to abandon even his closest allies the moment they waver. Just ask Jeff Sessions. Once his staunchest supporter, Sessions was tossed aside as soon as he recused himself from the Russia investigation. Trump labeled him weak and disloyal. Then came Bill Barr. Initially seen as Trump's protector, Barr defended him through the Mueller probe. But when he refused to endorse Trump's election lies, he was quickly denounced as a coward. Even Mike Pence, the ever-loyal vice president, wasn't spared. When he upheld the election results, Trump's followers built a gallows for him outside the Capitol, and Trump, instead of stepping in, tweeted that Pence lacked courage. This isn't a news story. From Kevin McCarthy to longtime legal allies, Trump's track record is consistent. When you're useful, you're in. When you're not, you're discarded. Now it's happening again. Only this time, the ones being left behind aren't just political allies. They're bankers, accountants, and lawyers, the very people who once helped construct the empire, now collapsing. The deeper the legal case goes, the more people are jumping ship. Everyone from lenders to advisors is looking for the exits. And for Trump, that's dangerous territory, because his entire brand is built on never surrendering, never compromising, and never admitting defeat. But now the walls are closing in, and even his closest financial allies are walking away. So the question becomes, what exactly pushed this entire case to the breaking point? Why now? The answer, prosecutors say, lies in a sprawling fraud operation that stretched back decades. A 197-page filing lays out the blueprint. A consistent, methodical strategy of inflating property values when applying for loans, and then dramatically reducing those same values when filing tax returns. It's a playbook built on deception. And Mar-a-Lago, as shocking as it sounds, was only the start. Investigators found similar tactics with Trump Tower, his golf resorts, even his personal penthouse. The scale is staggering. And it all finally came to light when one institution blinked: Deutsche Bank. After years of shielding Trump's finances, they finally gave in to mounting legal pressure and started cooperating with prosecutors. Internal emails reveal something damning. Bank officials privately acknowledged that Trump's numbers were bogus, but they approved the loans anyway because, as one executive put it, the fees are too good to pass up. That line, captured in writing, could now be the basis for criminal charges, not just against Trump, but against the bank executives themselves. At first, Trump did what he always does: deny, deflect, and go on the offensive. His first public reaction was textbook. He called it a politically motivated attack, labeled it a witch hunt, and told his supporters the deep state was out to get him. On his social platform, Truth Social, he blasted out posts claiming this was the most un-American act in history. He promised that his legal team would dismantle the case piece by piece. And for a while, it seemed like the usual strategy might hold. But then the tide shifted. The volume of evidence became impossible to ignore. More banks started cooperating. His attorneys, stretched thin across multiple cases, began sounding the alarm. Legal costs were skyrocketing. Properties were hemorrhaging cash. And perhaps most significantly, his donors were growing silent. The very people who once funded his rise were no longer picking up the phone. Behind the scenes, things were falling apart. Politico reported that internal meetings at Trump Organization headquarters in late October turned frantic. One participant described them as pure panic. Alan Weisselberg, Trump's longtime CFO, already convicted on tax fraud charges, reportedly broke down in tears during one meeting when the company's cash flow numbers were discussed. That detail alone reveals how serious things had gotten. Trump, the self-proclaimed master deal maker, was suddenly watching his empire teeter on the edge of collapse. And unlike before, there were no easy bailouts, no quick PR fix, just mounting legal problems and shrinking financial options. But instead of recalibrating, instead of considering a settlement, Trump made a decision that legal analysts now say sealed his fate. He didn't retreat. He doubled down. He instructed his lawyers to take an aggressive stance, not to negotiate or de-escalate, but to attack. They challenged the court's jurisdiction, claimed absolute immunity as a former president, and even argued that Judge Sandra Chen should recuse herself because she was appointed by George W. Bush. The message was clear. This wasn't about defending against fraud allegations. This was war. Trump would rather blow up the system than concede. But in doing so, he crossed a line. Judge Chen, known for her measured tone and strict adherence to law, reportedly lost patience. Her ruling didn't hold back. She labeled Trump's conduct as a pattern of willful manipulation, a direct assault on the integrity of financial institutions. And that was just the beginning. You see, Trump believes that any sign of compromise is weakness. In his world, admitting guilt is surrender. Judges are biased, prosecutors are corrupt. The system is out to get him, and he's the lone warrior fighting back. But this mindset, which may win applause at rallies, is now putting his entire fortune at risk. He's caught in a dangerous contradiction. Politically, he must project strength and never back down. But legally, he's being advised to settle, to admit fault, or at least to cooperate. That internal conflict between preserving his brand and protecting his assets is tearing his defense strategy apart. His lawyers, many of whom are veterans of high-stakes litigation, are reportedly frustrated. They know the numbers don't lie. They've seen the documents. But Trump won't budge, and the consequences of that are enormous. If he keeps pushing forward, he risks not only losing Mar-a-Lago, but potentially facing the liquidation of Trump Tower, his golf courses, his personal jet, everything. Criminal convictions are on the table. Prison time's not out of the question. His entire business operation, the foundation of his personal and political image, could be dismantled piece by piece. On the other hand, if he caves and negotiates, he might salvage some assets, but at the cost of admitting he was never the billionaire genius he claimed to be. That alone could shatter his hold on his base, which sees him as a winner who's always under attack by corrupt elites. It's a lose-lose scenario, and it's one he created himself. What's unfolding now is more than just a legal drama. It's a reckoning. Trump built his legacy on the illusion of success. But the deeper prosecutors dig, the clearer it becomes. That illusion was held together by a fragile network of inflated values, insider favors, and calculated risks. Now that illusion is crumbling under the weight of hard evidence. And it's not just prosecutors who are watching, it's the entire political class. Republican strategists, once eager to tie their fortunes to Trump, are now rethinking. With 2024 on the horizon, many are quietly wondering if Trump's legal troubles will take him out of the running altogether. For some, that's a relief. Trump's presence has long been a double-edged sword, energizing the base but alienating moderates. If he's forced out by legal issues, it spares them the risk of publicly opposing him. Moderate Republicans have been walking a tightrope trying to maintain distance from Trump without alienating his millions of loyal supporters. Now, with the walls closing in, they see a potential escape route. But not everyone's ready to let go. The MAGA faithful are digging in, convinced this is all part of a grand conspiracy. For them, every indictment, every seizure, every court ruling is further proof that Trump is being targeted for daring to challenge the system. They're not backing down. If anything, they're becoming more energized. Things reached a new level when three of the biggest Republican donors made a dramatic announcement. They were cutting ties with Trump. The signal couldn't be clearer. Ken Griffin, the billionaire hedge fund titan, who once gave Trump $5 million during the 2020 election cycle, came out publicly with a firm stance in a concise but forceful statement. He said, "I cannot in good conscience support any candidate facing credible allegations of financial fraud." That sentence hit like a thunderclap across the political landscape. Griffin isn't some centrist. He's poured money into right-wing candidates across the country. He's backed conservative judges, tax cutters, and Trump-aligned governors. But this time, even he drew a line. And when donors like Griffin turn away, it sends a strong message. The risk has become too high. Aligning with Trump is no longer a smart bet for those with serious money and serious reputations to protect. This is the shift that Republican operatives have long feared, not just political distancing, but financial abandonment. Without donor support, campaigns collapse. Legal defense funds dry up. The machine that Trump spent years building doesn't run on loyalty alone. It needs cash, and lots of it. Losing Griffin and others like him is a serious blow. But perhaps even more devastating was Warren Buffett's involvement, which by now has become the defining moment in this saga. You see, Buffett doesn't just bring money, he brings credibility. Across party lines, generations, and ideologies, Buffett is seen as the gold standard of ethical capitalism. He's cautious, he's grounded. He doesn't speculate wildly or get caught up in political feuds. So when Buffett speaks, especially on something as personal and specific as Trump's business ethics, people listen. Buffett's statement was more than a reaction. It was a warning. He revealed something previously unknown to the public. In 2019, Trump's team reportedly approached Berkshire Hathaway to explore investment opportunities in Trump properties. It was an open invitation, one that in Trump's world would have been seen as a major validation. But Buffett's team took one look at the numbers and walked away. According to Buffett, the valuations didn't add up. The financials looked inflated. The cash flow projections weren't realistic. And from a risk perspective, it didn't make sense. So they passed. That single anecdote, tucked into a larger public statement, did more damage to Trump's image than 100 lawsuits. Because if Warren Buffett, the man who made billions by spotting value where others don't, looked at Trump's empire and said, no thanks, it's hard to keep selling the idea that Trump is a genius businessman. For decades, Trump has built his persona on the idea that he's a master negotiator, a titan of real estate, a man who wins where others fail. His brand isn't just political, it's commercial. It's the foundation of his books, his shows, his hotels, and his rallies. But Buffett's statement cracked that foundation wide open. This wasn't a political rival talking. This was the financial world's most trusted voice saying publicly, this business model doesn't work. That kind of judgment is hard to spin. It's not emotional. It's not partisan. It's math. And in response, Trump did what he always does, lash out. But this time, the strategy isn't landing the same way. Because while he's attacking prosecutors and blaming judges, the legal machinery is still grinding forward. Judge Chen, recognizing how quickly evidence could be lost or destroyed, included a key provision in her order. Federal marshals were instructed to immediately secure all financial documents, server access points, and computer systems tied to Mar-a-Lago. This is significant. It means prosecutors are not just looking at historical fraud, they're actively working to prevent further violations. The government is treating this like a live crime scene, not just a legal dispute. That level of urgency suggests they believe Trump could still be manipulating data or concealing evidence. And when you read the judge's order in full, the tone becomes unmistakably clear. It isn't cautious. It isn't hedged. It's direct. The court concluded that Trump engaged in a deliberate and systematic effort to mislead financial institutions, insurance carriers, and tax authorities. That's more than strong language. In legal terms, it's damning because it implies not just carelessness or negligence, but intention, a long-term strategy of deception. That conclusion gave federal prosecutors all the room they needed to move aggressively. And it shifted public perception as well. For millions of Americans who may have tuned out the political noise, this case is different. It's not about classified documents or constitutional procedures. It's about something people understand at a basic level, lying about the value of your home to dodge taxes or get a better loan. Everyone knows what that means. Everyone knows that's wrong. It cuts through the political clutter. Democratic strategists are already preparing to use this moment. You can expect to see the images, federal agents outside Mar-a-Lago, Buffett's quote about deception, Griffin's statement about withdrawing support, all of it woven into campaign ads and talking points. They're building a new narrative, one that doesn't rely on ideology or policy disputes. Instead, it's about character, about honesty, about whether a man who built his fortune on shaky numbers and marketing bluster should ever be trusted with power again. And this time, they won't be making the case alone. Financial experts, legal analysts, even former Trump allies are now stepping forward with concerns. The cracks in the wall are getting wider, and the pressure inside Trump's camp is becoming harder to contain. But it's not just a Democratic playbook. The Justice Department itself is now at the center of this storm. Attorney General Merrick Garland who has been careful to keep the Department of Justice out of political crossfire, is now front and center, whether he wants to be or not. For years, Garland avoided making public waves. His approach was measured, quiet, and determined not to give the impression of partisanship. But with the seizure of Mar-a-Lago signed off by Garland, there's no way to avoid the political implications. Trump and his base are already framing this as a direct assault. They're saying it's the deep state at work, that Biden's DOJ is trying to sabotage Trump's return, that this is a politically motivated takedown disguised as law enforcement. It's a narrative Trump has used before, and one that's hardwired into his most loyal supporters. Still, Garland didn't act impulsively. Legal analysts say the sheer weight of evidence likely left him with no other choice. Doing nothing would have made the Department of Justice appear toothless or worse, complicit. And so, with full knowledge of the firestorm, it would trigger, Garland gave the green light. In doing so, he reignited a fundamental question at the heart of American democracy. Does the law truly apply to everyone, or do the powerful play by different rules? That's what this case has now become, not just about Trump, not just about Mar-a-Lago, but about the very idea of equal justice. And it's not a theoretical debate anymore. It's playing out in real time in courtrooms, headlines, and political circles across the country. The timing couldn't be more crucial. For more than 2 centuries, the American system has operated on the principle that no one, not even a president, is above the law. We've seen senators jailed, governors convicted, and even presidents impeached. The structure is designed to hold power in check, but Trump has always pushed against that structure. He's tested every boundary, questioned every rule, and repeatedly suggested that consequences are for other people. If he manages to walk away from this without serious repercussions, it could reshape what Americans believe is acceptable behavior from those in power. Because once someone proves they can sidestep the law without consequences, others will follow. That's the real danger. It's not just about Trump, it's about what happens after him. Legal experts are already warning about the precedent this could set. If Trump's decades of property fraud go unpunished, what message does that send to other wealthy business people who might be tempted to bend the rules? What about future politicians who decide that accountability is optional as long as they control the narrative? The impact could be far-reaching, undermining trust in not just financial systems, but in the idea that democracy functions based on rules, not personalities. And that's why this case is so much bigger than one man or one property. It's about whether democratic institutions can hold when someone powerful refuses to play by the rules, and whether the system is strong enough to push back. That's the battle we're watching unfold right now. Every new court filing, every donor statement, every media interview becomes a piece of that larger puzzle. And with each passing day, the stakes get higher. Trump's inner circle knows this. According to reports from October and early November, there's growing anxiety among his team, not just about the legal outcomes, but about the political cost. If Trump is seen not just as legally vulnerable, but as financially collapsing, it could erode the very myth that sustains him. Remember, Trump's appeal has always been rooted in strength. He markets himself as the winner, the deal maker, the billionaire. Take away that image, and you're left with someone who looks more like a con man than a leader. And that's not just speculation. For many Republican voters who supported Trump because they believed he was financially successful and politically untouchable, these new revelations are shaking the foundation of that belief. The image of federal marshals seizing his property, of Warren Buffett denouncing his business model, of longtime allies like Ken Griffin cutting ties, all of that is powerful. It cuts through the noise. It tells a story people can understand. And once that narrative takes hold, it's hard to undo. It begins to chip away at the loyalty, even among his base. Meanwhile, prosecutors are moving quickly to ensure that no stone is left unturned. The court order didn't just freeze Mar-a-Lago, it allowed federal agents to access all records, financials, and internal communications tied to Trump's network of businesses. Sources close to the investigation say the team is now combing through years of documents that could reveal even more fraud, possibly involving properties beyond those already named. It's an expanding case, not a finished one, and each new discovery adds pressure both in court and in public opinion. Now, with each new revelation, The stakes are getting clearer and higher because what's happening to Trump isn't just another news cycle. It's shaping the future of the Republican Party and the trajectory of American politics. Heading into 2026, the impact of these legal battles will ripple far beyond one man's downfall. We're now in the aftermath of a turbulent political era, but the shadow of Trump's influence still looms. The story unfolding in courtrooms and financial statements is rapidly becoming the defining narrative of a party struggling with its identity. For years, Trump commanded loyalty through dominance. But voters, especially independents and moderate Republicans, are showing signs of fatigue. They're looking for stability, for leaders who aren't constantly at the center of scandal, chaos, or criminal investigation. History tells us voters rarely reward disorder. When a candidate is engulfed in controversy after controversy, there comes a breaking point. Many voters don't follow politics closely, but they know a sinking ship when they see one. And Trump's brand, once sold as invincible and golden, now appears bruised, battered, and exposed. His wealth is under scrutiny. His properties are entangled in legal red tape. And the myth of his business genius is unraveling in real time. For Democrats, this moment is a powerful opportunity. They're no longer just accusing Trump of being a danger to democracy. They're pointing to court rulings, federal investigations, and respected voices like Warren Buffett who are validating those concerns with hard evidence. Campaigns will weaponize this, not just in speeches, but in videos, social media, and debates. Trump's own actions are writing the script for the opposition. But perhaps the most serious question isn't political at all. It's about the justice system. Can it still function independently when the person being investigated has so much influence, so much wealth, and such a loud megaphone? The next few months will be the ultimate test. Trump's legal team will file appeal after appeal, trying to slow down or block proceedings. His supporters will ramp up the rhetoric, pushing conspiracy theories and stoking public outrage. And every institution involved, from federal courts to the Department of Justice, will be tested under intense pressure. It's a stress test for the rule of law itself. Because if Trump somehow manages to reverse this seizure, to skate past these fraud charges, the message will be crystal clear. The law bends for the powerful. And if that happens, we're no longer talking about a single scandal. We're talking about a shift in how justice is applied in America. This isn't about Mar-a-Lago anymore. It's about the larger principle, whether those with enough influence, enough money, and enough media control can simply opt out of accountability. That's the core issue now. It's a moment where the country decides, consciously or not, if justice really is blind, or if it's just looking the other way when the stakes get too high. Trump's legal fate will have long-lasting consequences, not just for him, but for every politician who comes after him. If he's held accountable, it sets a precedent. If he walks away, it opens the door for others to follow his example. That's why this case matters. That's why the details, the valuations, the fraud, the court orders aren't just technicalities. They're indicators of whether American democracy still enforces its own rules. Right now, we're watching that system struggle to assert itself. Trump's lawyers are exhausting every legal path. His supporters are doubling down. But so are the courts. So are the investigators. And so are the people across the country who still believe that the truth matters, that law matters. What we're seeing unfold is a collision between power and principle. The final outcome isn't just a verdict. It's a statement about what kind of country the United States wants to be.